Welcome to your daily dose of sci-fi adventures. New stories dropped every single day. Smash that subscribe button and ring the to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and unlock even more epic cosmic tales. Dr. Leela Farouk sat bolt upright in the cramped cockpit of the Rustred transport, her fingers drumming on the armrest as the engines hummed. Beyond the reinforced windshield, dunes rippled like molten fire, stretching in every direction until the horizon vanished beneath the midday sun. It was as though they were crossing an ocean of sand. Every shift in light revealed a new wave of ochre peaks, each one taller than the last, each one uncharted. Beside her, Captain Rafael Mendes adjusted the navigational console, squinting at the satellite overlay. "We've got 30 minutes until touchdown," he said, voice barely audible over the roar. "Thermal currents are kicking up fast. Keep your goggles on." Leela nodded, tightening the straps on her protective hood. For months ago, a routine seismic survey had unearthed an anomaly, a hollow cavity hundreds of feet beneath the desert floor, reflecting metal densities no natural formation could explain. Today, at dawn, an international convoy had touched down on the first waypoint. Now they were pushing deeper, following subsurface radar echoes that hinted at something extraordinary. When the transport's skids finally bit into the sand, Leela exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The horizon shimmered with heat, the air alive with the hiss of wind sculpting dunes into grieving shapes. She stepped onto the landing ramp and felt the ground shift beneath her boots. The team had already erected tents, generators humming as they powered drilling rigs and portable labs. A handful of camels and support vehicles waited in the distance, silent guardians in this alien sea. "Welcome to Gadamas Sector Delta," called Dr. Mailing Zhao, waving Leela over. Mailing was the expedition's lead linguist and cultural analyst, a petite woman with quick eyes and a shock of silver hair. She wore a utility vest overloaded with data drives, comms gear, and notebooks filled with scribbles in half a dozen alphabets. "Morning," Leela replied, brushing sand from her goggles. "How's the drill team?" "On schedule," Mailing said, tapping a screen on her wrist monitor. "We hit 80 meters before lunch, an hour ago." The echo quality spiked. "I think whatever we're dealing with has a clear boundary hard surface. Could be hull plating. Could be something else." Leela's pulse quickened. "Something else," Mailing smiled faintly. "Dr. Farouk, you know this is the reason you signed on. Let's see what the Earth's been hiding." With that, they strode toward the sinkhole the core drill had uncovered, a yawning mouth in the sand, 6 meters across. Around it, engineers in steel-toed boots and dust-caked coveralls worked like ants, lowering a reinforced camera probe into the darkness. The monitor flickered, and for a moment, only blackness stared back. Then a glint, faint at first, a reflection from something smooth. The probe's lights revealed parallel ridges, metallic and uniform, etched into a curved surface. A collective murmur rose among the onlookers. "Steel," someone joked, but their voice trembled. "Unlikely," Leela muttered, leaning closer. "That sheen, it's too regular, too refined." Captain Mendes approached, brow furrowed. "Depth 82 meters and descending," reported Lieutenant Sarah Ortiz, eyes glued to the screen. "We've got a cavity forming. If I had to guess, it's a chamber." Leela glanced at the seismic cross-sections displayed on the rig's projector. The outlines formed an elongated ellipse, like a giant teardrop lying on its side. This is large," she whispered. "At least 30 meters long, maybe more." She turned to face the desert's vast panorama. Years ago, an expedition would have taken months to reach this site. Now we're here in a day, but nothing in any of our records hints at an object of this scale buried under the Sahara. A half-dozen nations were funding this mission, each with its own agenda. Some sought mineral riches, some coveted military advantage. Others quietly prayed for proof of extraterrestrial life. Leela, however, was driven by pure curiosity. Her doctoral thesis had speculated on the archaeology of impossible artifacts, and she never dreamed she'd find one dot as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the sands. The team prepared to strip away the overburden. Massive earth movers clawed at the sand, depositing it in neat piles. At the heart of the trench lay the hull slick, seamless and unfathomably smooth. Its alloy shimmered in hues of copper and jade, like a mirage that danced when viewed from different angles. Leela circled the trench and ran her gloved hand along the hull's lip. It felt warm, not hot, as though it maintained its own internal temperature. No welds, no seams, just the gentle curve of an immense envelope. At one point, she found a panel dotted with inset crystals, the size of her fingertips, glowing faintly. She peered closer. Fractal veins ran through them, channels of light that pulsed in slow, rhythmic cadence. Bioluminescent circuitry, Rajesh Kulkarni said, joining her side. He was tall and lean, with eyes that flickered like a scanner. I've never seen crystals that self-organize into functional networks. They behave almost like neurons, Leela nodded, which suggests this thing lived. Rajesh's eyes widened. You think the ship itself is alive, or was, she corrected. Whatever energy source, it had long since faded. But these filaments, they retain a memory. Captain Maindus blew out a breath. We need to open it. The crowd hushed. Opening an alien vessel was a gamble. It could be pressurized. It could be contaminated. Protocol dictated a full suite of biological containment, magnetic shielding, remote analysis. But at the edge of human knowledge, decisions often outran regulations. Electromagnetic scans? Mei Ling asked. A neutral field sweep detected. No significant radiation, Ortiz answered. But there are faint magnetic skew readings, like a residual field locked in patterns, Leela exhaled. Fine, prepare the excavation lasers. But we do this slow. We map every angle. We scan for biosignatures and volatile compounds. All through the night, the team worked. Floodlights blazed, turning the desert into a surreal theater. Stalwart scientists in white suits hovered at the trench's edge, feeding data into laptops. Drones hovered overhead, mapping the excavation in 3 dimensions. The hull yielded to the lasers with surprising ease, the panels shifting apart in sections as though they were petals unfolding. Then, at precisely 3:14 a.m. local time, the final segment dropped away, revealing the hatch. It was an oval door 19 meters tall and 8 meters wide, its surface covered in swirling glyphs that seemed to move under the lights. None resembled any human script or any known primordial symbols. Some patterns mirrored the crystalline biocircuitry. Others traced concentric rings like ripples on water. Silent. Leela stepped to the hatch and laid her palm against it. The glyphs shimmered beneath her glove. She felt a faint current, like a heartbeat or a warning. Seal the trench, she ordered. I want this door kept under vacuum lock until we're ready. Behind her, Ortiz keyed commands into a console. Hydraulic clamps slid into place, securing the hatch. The air hissed out, leaving a crisp vacuum that sent sand spiraling inward. In the hush that followed, Leela pressed an ear to the rim. She heard nothing, no creak of machinery, no hiss of power. Just silence older than civilization itself. She straightened, chest tight with anticipation. We're here, she said softly. We've crossed the final frontier. And in that moment, as the desert wind whipped the unsealed edges and the floodlights cast stark halos on the dunes, it felt as if the entire planet held its breath, waiting with her for the hatch to open. The morning sun had barely crested the eastern dunes when the containment team arrived, clad in pearlescent biohazard suits that gleamed like oil slicks in the dawn light. Dr. Leela Farouk watched through the reinforced viewport as they removed the vacuum locks from the hatch, each clamp released with a muted hiss, as though sighing after centuries of holding secrets fast against the sands of time. Leela checked her readouts. Atmospheric filters green across the board, no trace of volatile organics, radiation levels well within safety margins. She keyed her mic. Team Alpha, proceed on my mark. Inside, an echo chamber of pale luminescence waited. The hatch swung inward on silent magnetic bearings, revealing a long vestibule whose walls pulsed with that same bioluminescent circuitry. Light rippled outward from elongated hexagonal cells embedded in the bulkhead, creating shifting patterns that guided their path like a slow-motion river of living data. Dr. Rajesh Kulkarni, laser scanner in hand, took point. His device traced the surface textures, the metal alloy, if it could even be called that, was smooth yet porous, as though alive. Tiny ridges oscillated beneath his scanner's beam, responding to its energy in a delicate dance of resonance. "The hull's active," he whispered into his comlink. "It's symbiotic. Every cutaneous layer interfaces with anything I apply." Lieutenant Sarah Ortiz followed, carrying the first of the sampling pods. She knelt to collect a sliver of the crystalline circuitry. As her gloved fingers touched the filament, the pod's sealing rim unfurled and snapped shut with elegant precision, preserving a piece of the ship's living network. Behind them, Dr. Mei-Ling Zhao recorded every symbol, every curve of glyph and filament. Her augmented reality rig overlaid translations tentative, incomplete against the hull's patterns. "These aren't purely decorative," she murmured. "They form words, concepts. They're part of a narrative." Leela led them deeper. Baton-light carving arcs through the gentle glow. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its domed ceiling lost in soft shadow, 20 meters across. The floor rippled with concentric rings that converged on a crystalline sphere floating at its center. That sphere half again Leela's height was suspended within a lattice of bioluminescent struts, each strand connecting wall to core like tendrils in a galactic web. When the team paused, the luminescent filaments around the sphere brightened. As though sensing their presence, light cascaded across its surface, refracting into spectral veins of color emerald, violet, sapphire that danced like a living aurora. Leela stepped forward, breath caught in her throat. This is the archive," she said, voice trembling. "The heart of the ship." Dr. Kulkarni extended a probe, carefully contacting the sphere's surface. Instantly, the pulsing lights synchronized with the probe's harmonic frequency. The air quivered, and the sphere's fluid interior began to churn. Ghostly filaments coalesced into shapes vestigial forms of creatures that might have swum in alien seas or flown through nebular gases then dissolved, replaced by vast maps of starlines and coordinates. Interactive data, Ortiz breathed. A living interface. Leela activated her translation module, feeding it the glyphs projected around the room. They formed a header above the sphere in luminous script, the first chronicles of the Starburn. Beneath it, the walls illustrated the shipborne's journey, a sequence of pictograms showing a planet shattered by stellar collapse, survivors boarding craft, and a flight through voids of light and shadow. As if responding to her eyes, the sphere pulsed more brightly. A soft hum swelled, then resolved into tones and otherworldly melody that resonated in the bones. The visual display shifted. Now a single, towering figure appeared above the sphere, robed in filaments of glowing energy. Its face was inscrutable, but compassionate, eyes like twin stars. Leela felt tears prick at her eyelids. Dr. Zhao stepped beside her, voice hushed. "This is their ambassador, or perhaps a record of their collective consciousness." The figure raised a hand, and glyphs unfurled around it in animated arcs. Dr. Zhao's rig translated in real time. "We are the Starburn keepers of knowledge, gardeners of worlds. Our homeworld Peridanos fell to entropy's embrace. We took to the stars, carrying seeds of life and memory. May our legacy inspire those who find us." A collective intake of breath filled the chamber. The words resonated like an invocation, binding the humans to a covenant forged across light years. Suddenly, the sphere dimmed and the images receded, leaving only the ambient glow of the circuitry. The silence that followed felt intimate, as though the shipburn had shared their most sacred truth and then retreated into quiet reflection. Leela looked at her team, eyes wide, hearts pounding. They all understood. This ship was not merely a derelict. It was a living monument, a vessel of conscious intent. "We need to catalog everything," Leela said. Voice firmer now. "Species data, tech schematics, star maps, all of it. But we also need to honor their wishes outside." The desert wind sighed against the hull. Inside, time seemed suspended in that cathedral of light. The shipborne's echoes had filled the chamber, and in doing so, they had awakened something deep within every human soul, the boundless wonder of discovery and the profound responsibility that came with the gift of knowledge. As the expedition prepared to harvest the first wave of data, Leela allowed herself one glance back at the sphere. It hovered in its crystalline cradle, serene and inscrutable. And in that moment, she swore. She heard the faintest whisper, "Carry on our dream." By midday, the expedition camp hummed with activity. Tents formed a crescent around the excavation site's perimeter, their pale fabric fluttering against the unrelenting heat. Inside the central command tent, an air-conditioned hub bristling with monitors and consoles, Dr. Leela Farouk convened her senior team for the first true debrief. "Here's where we stand," she began, tapping her wrist-mounted display. A holographic projection sprang to life above the table, the domed chamber, the crystalline sphere, and a series of alcoves lining the far wall. Each alcove contained a pendant-shaped pod suspended in nutrient gel, its contents floating like frozen tableaux of alien life. "We've captured over 5 million data points from the Lightweave archives," she continued. "But that's just the beginning. What's inside those pods may rewrite biology as we know it." Dr. Rajesh Kulkarni leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Our initial scans show over a dozen distinct life forms, everything from plant-like strands that photosynthesize on infrared light, to small creatures whose skeletons refract repurposed starflare energy." He tapped a separate icon, and a detailed 3D model of one specimen, a translucent, six-limbed organism, rotated in the air. "We believe these were Arc specimens, a curated biosphere meant to seed worlds," Lieutenant Sarah Ortiz, who'd been monitoring environmental sensors, frowned. "We need strict containment protocols. Even dormant organisms could carry unknown pathogens or worse. Invasive genetics that upset Earth's ecosystems." She pointed to a line of code scrolling across her tablet. "I'm setting up quarantine labs adjacent to the main site. No sample leaves without level 5 clearance." Dr. Meiling Zhao, translating the glyphic collateral in real time, interjected softly. The shipburn themselves left a caution. Fragmentary text alongside the specimen pods reads, "Guard our gardens. They are the roots of worlds." She tapped in our marker, superimposing luminous script onto the table model. "They knew these organisms could reshape a planet, terraform, in our terms. They also feared misuse." Captain Rafael Mendes stood and circled the projection. "We should consider the strategic implications. Imagine power plants fueled by crystalline biocircuits, agriculture that thrives in arid climates, or medical breakthroughs from alien biochemistry." He paused. "But Meiling's right. The shipburn foresaw the potential for abuse. Their final message warned against weaponization." Leela let the weight of their words settle. "This is more than a scientific trove. It's a moral crucible. Our next step must balance knowledge with responsibility." She clicked her display, and the sphere's star maps appeared, layered over a galactic coordinate grid. "We've isolated the key star systems from the archive, Tau-18, their home's ancient orbit, and a last known waypoint near our own solar periphery. The latter lies in the outer Oort cloud, less than 2 light days from Earth." A sharp exhale echoed through the tent. Ortiz shook her head. "They reached our neighborhood over a century ago, and we never noticed." "It appears so," Meiling confirmed. "The shipborne's transmission relay likely collapsed after they buried the vessel. Or they went into stasis." Rajesh frowned at the star map. "If their craft drifted here and went dormant, the implications are staggering. Their technology might still be active beyond this site. We're only seeing a fraction of what they accomplished." Leela tapped a sealed folder on the table. "Protocol allows remote reconnaissance. We'll outfit a probe with the ship's living circuitry, interface those crystalline filaments, and send it into the Oort cloud. It should connect seamlessly with any residual network out there." Mendes raised an eyebrow. "And what if it does? Are we ready to meet them? Or whatever remains of them?" Silence settled. Then Meiling spoke, their final inscription at the ship's entrance. "We laid down our hopes, the descendants of Earth, carry on our dream." It wasn't a warning, it was an invitation. Leela felt a rush of something close to euphoria and dread. They entrusted us with a legacy. If we decline to pursue it now, that legacy dies. But if we press on without caution, we risk unleashing forces we cannot control. Over the next 48 hours, the camp transformed. Engineers constructed a reinforced probe casing, embedding samples of the bioluminescent circuitry and biogel interfaces harvested from the sphere's tendrils. Exobiologists calibrated sensors to detect xenopathogens, while cryptolinguists worked to refine supplementary translations of the shipborne's pictograms. Every evening, Leela hosted briefings under the floodlights, updating the team and reminding them of their dual mandate, discovery and stewardship. On the third night, as a sapphire moon rose above the dunes, the launch window opened. The probe, nicknamed Arbor Vitae, stood ready on a platform aimed sunward. Solar sails woven from an ultralight latticed alloy gleamed from the hull. Fragments gleamed like a giant web. At its core, a sealed module held the biocircuitry sample, biogel interfaces grafted into a synthetic neural lattice. Leela and Mendes donned headsets on the comm deck. Telemetry check, Ortiz's voice crackled. Power systems green, neural interface active. Pathogen filters nominal. All systems go. Engage sequence, Leela commanded. A low hum swelled as the sails unfurled, catching the residual heat of day. The platform's magnetic clamps released, and Arbor Vitae began its graceful ascent, leaving a trail of charged particles that danced like fleeting comets against the night sky. Moments later, it cleared the camp's telemetry range, relaying a final image, the domed chamber, bathed in bioluminescent glow, shrinking behind. "Godspeed," Leela whispered. Silence reigned for an excruciating minute until Ortiz's voice returned. "Signal acquired, strong and steady. We're receiving data across multiple screens." A mosaic of readings streamed in, residual glyphic sequences from the Oort periphery. A faint but coherent hum mirroring the ship's original signature. And most astonishing, a series of pulse-encoded messages in the living circuitry's neural net. Dr. Zhao's eyes widened as she decrypted the first lines, awakened. "We remember." A collective gasp swept the command tent. Leela's heart pounded. "They're alive," she murmured, voice barely audible. "Or their essence is." Captain Mendes looked to her, breathless. "What now?" Leela squared her shoulders. "Now we listen." She met each team member's gaze in turn. "We've crossed the threshold. The shipburn have answered our summons. From here on, every discovery must honor their trust and our humanity." Outside, the desert wind carried the distant whistle of the probe echoing across empty dunes. Beneath the sands, the buried ship pulsed with renewed life, its bioluminescent filaments weaving new patterns of light. And somewhere, hidden in the frozen expanse of the Oort cloud, an echo replied, a promise woven in starlight, bridging the gulf between worlds. The first glow of dawn painted the desert sky in soft lavender as the camp stirred to life. The previous night's breakthrough crackled through every comm channel. Arbor Vitae's probe had transmitted a brief but unmistakable reply from the Oort cloud. "Awakened. We remember." Humanity's most momentous conversation had begun, and the world waited with bated breath. A world transformed within hours. The camp transformed into a makeshift mission control. Giant screens flickered with the probe's feed, swirls of interstellar dust lit by starlight, faint auroras dancing across the backdrop of black. Data analysts from 5 continents tapped furiously at keyboards, parsing the shipborne's neural pattern. Transmissions. Dr. Mei-Ling Zhao hovered over a secondary console, cross-referencing glyphic roots with the live feed and refining translations. "Here," she called, pointing to a line of pulsing nodes in the data stream. On her screen, the shipborne's fractal script spiraled outward like a miniature galaxy. "This section, through the gate of starlight, we journey beyond memory. Welcome, seekers." She paused. "They're inviting us to join them beyond." Even the Oort interface. Dr. Rajesh Kulkarni checked readings from the probe's onboard sensors. "Their vessel's biofield still extends beyond their original hull," he reported. "They've anchored networks in interstellar space. If we can decode the interface, we might access their navigation systems, perhaps even travel with them." Leela watched the dawn sun rise over the dunes, her mind racing. Decades of Earth's space programs suddenly felt provincial. Before them lay corridors of hyperspace, once charted by the shipburn, waiting for human probes, maybe even people to traverse. But that next step would demand resources, coordination, and above all, trust. The Covenant of Knowledge. Mid-afternoon, the Global Scientific Council convened an emergency summit by Secure Link. Heads of space agencies, ethicists, military liaisons, and representatives of the United Nations gathered in virtual chambers. On giant holo displays, Leela presented the capsule archives, the star maps, and Arbor Vitae's reply. This is more than a discovery, she concluded. It's an invitation to join an interstellar legacy. But we must tread carefully. The shipburn entrusted us with their archives and their living vessel. We cannot betray that trust. A chorus of voices rose. Some urged swift action, send crewed missions, build new starships. Others cautioned restraint. First, ensure the interface free of viral contamination. Second, gain consensus on the ethical use of alien biotechnologies. Third, prepare humanity for the cultural and existential shock of cosmic citizenship. In the end, the Council passed the Covenant of Knowledge, a framework binding all nations to a shared protocol. Transparent research, all shipburn data and technologies must be openly shared. Non-weaponization, no alien biotech, circuits, or archival knowledge may be adapted for hostilities. Cultural respect, the shipborn's legacy is sacrosanct. Any engagement must honor their memory and intentions. Joint exploration, future missions, to interact with residual shipburn networks shall be multinational and civilian-led. Leela allowed herself a small, relieved smile. The world had chosen unity over division. In her bones, she felt the shift. Humanity's impulse to hoard and dominate had been tempered by a deeper yearning to belong. 3. Awakening the Starburn archive. Back at the buried vessel, the team prepared for the next phase, activating the living corridors. Earth's finest biotechnicians and engineers labored to connect a remote interface module to the hatch's exterior glyph array. Using the crystalline circuitry samples, they crafted a synthetic key capable of channeling the shipborn's bioluminescent signals. On the appointed evening, Leela and Rajesh stood before the sealed hatch, now ringed with coiling optical fibers. Ortiz monitored external sensors. Mailing oversaw translation projections. With a soft chime, Rajesh inserted the key into the hatch's glyph-adorned lock. At once, the hull blossomed in waves of emerald and violet light. The optical fibers pulsed, transmitting Arbor Vitae's neural patterns into the buried ship. The ground trembled gently as if the vessel had exhaled after centuries of slumber. Within, the bioluminescent corridor flared to life, its walls glowing with renewed intensity. The living circuitry rewove itself, opening pathways previously hidden. The oval hatch glided inward, revealing a ramp bathed in ethereal radiance. Beyond the ramp lay the grand cathedral chamber, its crystalline sphere now aflame with constellations previously unseen. New chapters of the Starburn Chronicles. A hush fell over the onlookers as the corridor's lights coalesced into a message. Hearts of Earth, join us. The gate stands open. Leela felt tears well. She keyed her mic. This is Dr. Farouk. We accept your invitation. 4. The first human passenger's plans moved swiftly. Within days, an international crew of scientists, engineers, and cultural scholars was selected to be the first human passengers to step inside the Starburn network. They trained in zero-gravity simulators, xenobiology labs, and linguistic immersion programs for the shipborne's dialectic scripts. On July 10, 2025, precisely 1 month after their initial contact, Leela watched the crew board a modified descent module built around a living biocircuit interface. The module docked seamlessly, with the buried vessel's shuttle bay and antechamber revealed by the newly awakened corridors. As the hatch closed behind them, Leela felt a surge of pride and wonder. Through every hurdle, ethical debates, technical enigmas, geopolitical friction, humanity had prevailed in solidarity. Now, a dozen people would cross the threshold between Earth and the stars. Moments later, the hatch reopened. The return crew emerged, gasping at the desert dawn, eyes wide with rapture. Each carried data consoles humming with fresh transmissions, maps of hyperluminous corridors threading the galaxy, recordings of the shipborne's final hymns, blueprints of self-sustaining habitats floating in interstellar space. Dr. Kulkarni embraced Leela. The corridor network, it's a star bridge, he said, voice choked. We've plotted routes to system after system. The shipburn literally mapped the galaxy for us. Leela placed a hand on the hatch's rim. The bioluminescent filaments glowed softly beneath her palm, like the steady pulse of a living heart. They've given us more than knowledge, she whispered. They've given us a future, 5. A new dawn for humanity. In the weeks that followed, the world watched as Earth's first starborn corridor missions launched. Probes and supply modules shot through gates of shimmering light, bound for far-flung stars once only dreamed of. Global cooperation flourished, new treaties, shared infrastructure, and a renaissance of arts and philosophy inspired by interstellar communion. Dr. Leela Fruk returned to her hometown in Bucharest for a moment's respite. Standing atop a rooftop garden as the city stretched below, she reflected on how a dune in the Sahara had transformed destiny. The buried vessel remained under watchful study, its corridors forever open to human pioneers. She gazed up at the night sky, now crisscrossed by distant beacons, small but real signs of human journeys begun. Each point of light represented collaboration, courage, and the abiding promise of the starburn. And in that starlit firmament, Earth had found its place among civilizations of light. Above her, the constellations winked, but Leela knew those patterns were no longer just fantasies. They were highways of hope, threads in a tapestry woven by countless hands across time and space. The horizon was unbound, and with it, the boundless spirit of humanity soared at last among the stars.